Hi everybody, this is Steve Manser, and this roller tutorial is on rental agreements. Rental agreements are probably the most central feature of Roller. Working with them involves working with rentables, rentable types, assessments, account rules, payers, users, pets, vehicles, so many pieces. So it's really important that we have some basic definitions that clearly define what each of these things are and how they work. So let's start with rental agreements. Rental agreements define who rents what, for how long, and for how much. So let's break it down. The what is rentables or services. A rentable is just anything that can be rented. An apartment, furniture, or a car. Now, services are something other than a rentable that we charge for. For example, housekeeping services, dining privileges at the commissary, internet service, dish or cable TV service. And you can have as many rentables and services on a rental agreement as you want. The who, in this case, are transactants. Now, transactant is kind of a funny word. It just refers to a person or a company in the Roller system. And that transactant has roles in the context of Roller. They could be a payer, which means they're financially responsible for paying rent and other fees. They could be a user, someone who uses the rentable. They could be a guarantor. This is someone who essentially guarantees rent for another payer. And finally, they can be any combination of those things. For example, it's very common to have someone who is both a payer and a user. I'm financially responsible for the rent of my apartment. I also happen to live there. Now, the when refers to a time range, and in Roller there are 3 time ranges. First, you have the agreement start and stop, which defines when the rental agreement is active. Next, we have rent start and stop, which defines the period of time that we're charging rent. And finally, we have possession start and stop, which defines the period of time which the users take possession of the rentables. Now, in most cases, these 3 time ranges will probably all be the same, but they're not required to be the same thing, and there may be circumstances where it makes sense for them to be different. Now, how much refers to the assessments. What are we charging the payers under this rental agreement? So the rental agreement should have a list of all the charges we're going to be assessing against the payers. Now, Roller can be configured to suggest charges on new rental agreements. But the point that everybody should remember is that it is the responsibility of the leasing agents to make sure that all the charges that are supposed to be there are there and that the amounts are correct. Amounts can be negotiated differently on each rental agreement. And finally, the leasing agents will need to calculate all the amounts due at signing. Roller does not suggest amounts due at signing. Rental agreements have a life cycle consisting of 7 different states. The first state is application being completed. Now, for new rental agreements, this means that the applicant and the leasing agents are filling out all the basic information. For existing rental agreements, this means that the information for an amendment, some change, is being entered into the system. The next state is pending first approval. This means that all the information has been put into the system, it's being checked, and will either be approved or declined. The next state is pending second approval. This means that the first approval was made and now a second approval is required to proceed. Next is the move-in/execute state. This means that all the approvals have been made and that the new rental agreement or the amended rental agreement is all ready for signing. So the payers and the guarantors will execute the documents, they'll sign them. And once the documents are signed, if it's a new rental agreement, the users can move in, take possession of the rentables. If it's an update to an existing rental agreement, it means the amendments go into effect. The next state is the active state. This means that the rental agreement is active, but most importantly, it means that all the assessments are active. So all rent and service charges are actively being assessed. The next state is notice to move, which means that a payer has given notice of their intent to terminate the rental agreement. And finally, we have the terminated state, which means that the rental agreement has been terminated. In the next few video tutorials, we're going to screen capture a bunch of roller sessions. First, we'll go through all the features of the UI. Then we'll create a rental agreement from scratch. Then we'll cover a few special cases. For example, we'll renew a rental agreement after its time period has elapsed. We'll walk through amending an existing rental agreement. And we'll go through an example where we have to backdate a rental agreement. Okay, so I think we've covered all the basic information we need now to go into depth on how to create rental agreements. As always, leave me comments below if there's any terms or things that were not clear or that need to be covered better. Please leave me questions or comments below, and I will do my best to answer all of them.